Operant conditioning is a model for how dogs learn and was articulated by B.F. Skinner, who was a scientist in the United States in the mid-20th century. Operant conditioning is using interventions of adding and removing things in order to teach a dog associations between their behavior and the consequences. In operant conditioning, there are 4 quadrants: positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, and negative punishment. Many people use the terms of operant conditioning incorrectly or informally, which changes the meaning and makes it very difficult to discuss techniques and even ethics. So this video is going to clarify what those terms mean, how they exist in the real world, and how to use these concepts to help shape a dog's behavior. In operant conditioning, the terms positive and negative are not moral terms. That's one place where people often get tripped up. Positive just means you add something, and negative means you remove something. Reinforcement means it causes the dog to do more of that behavior, and punishment means it causes the dog to do less of that behavior. In positive reinforcement, you're adding something to get more of that behavior. An example of this in leash handling would be a dog volunteering walking in the heel position, meaning the dog is in the heel position on their own, and you give them a food reward. You add in the food reward to get more heel position walking. In negative reinforcement, you are also trying to get more of that behavior from the dog. So you're removing something to get the dog to do more of a behavior. The term negative just means to remove something. It's not a moral term. Usually in negative reinforcement, we're removing pressure to communicate to the dog that they did the right thing. If you've worked with horses, you're probably familiar with this concept. Releasing pressure on the lead or reins, releasing social pressure with your body language are rewards for the horse doing the behavior you want. An example from leash handling is when the dog moves 1 inch in the direction of the leash pressure, we immediately slack the leash. Positive punishment means you're adding something to get less of a behavior. Punishment is another word that tends to trip people up. We're not talking about prison or timeout or spankings. It doesn't mean physical harm. Punishment simply means the intervention diminishes a behavior. An example of positive punishment in leash handling is if a dog goes to the end of the leash and they hold pressure there, we add in pulses or pops on the leash. We want less pulling on the leash, so we're responding to that behavior by making it uncomfortable or annoying for them to do it. We add in the pulses to reduce the pulling. Lastly, negative punishment. It sounds scary, but it just means that you remove something that the dog likes in order to get them to do less of a particular behavior. An example from our work as dog professionals is removing a treat from when a dog is trying to snatch it. If a dog gets out of position or tries to bite your hand off when taking a treat, withholding giving the reward, you're removing something they want in order to diminish the behavior of snatching the treat. Don't get too stuck on trying to fit a technique into a single quadrant. A particular technique is often going to be working on more than one quadrant at a time. There's lots of bleed over between quadrants, especially the ones that are diagonal to each other. Oftentimes, you're going to be trying to get the dog to stop doing one thing and instead do a different thing in the same moment. So you'll be punishing one thing and reinforcing another thing at the same time or very close together. So these 4 quadrants are more conceptual. They're not clean, separate categories. For example, withholding reward and delivering reward. When the dog is snatchy, you pull the treat away, which is negative punishment. When the dog goes back into the sit or relaxes, you deliver the treat, which is positive reinforcement. A unique quality of negative reinforcement is there has to be pressure on in order to take pressure off. This pressure may just be incidental, like a dog is walking along and gets to the end of the leash. That pressure on likely has no meaning to the dog. Or if you are applying physical pressure by touching a dog's body, depending on the dog, they may or may not care or notice that you are even touching them. For some dogs and some techniques, the pressure on might be communicative in itself. The pressure that goes on is significant to the dog. They notice it and they may even want to avoid it. Dogs who are sensitive to touch will notice when you touch their body, even if it's lightly. Dogs who are sensitive socially will notice your body language and feel social pressure and spatial pressure, even if you aren't intentionally trying to communicate anything. Being intentional about the order of operations is huge with operant conditioning. You are trying to create an association between the behavior and the consequence, and you're trying to clarify your meaning as much as possible. This will help the dog learn faster and minimize them developing any superstitions. Dogs see cause and effect as X happened, which caused Y, which caused Z. If X and Z happen at the same time, then Y, it will be a lot more difficult for the dog to understand your communication. So try to separate out the cause and effect, even by half a second. You want to make sure you are reinforcing the things you like and punishing the things you don't like, not doing the opposite on accident. A lot of our communications with dogs fit into the quadrants and can be improved with this model. The quadrants can help us be more intentional in what we're trying to say and help us get better results. But Skinner didn't see dogs as complex creatures with free will. He saw all behavior as cause and effect, which is a gross oversimplification. Dogs have their individual temperaments, hereditary tendencies, preferences, and life experiences. They're not automatons, and your ability to use the quadrants in communication relies heavily on your relationship together. Operant conditioning is a helpful model, but shaping behavior is about much more than just positive and negative interventions.
If this video helped you, please like and subscribe. Share it with other dog walkers. Also, check out our Patreon, where you can sign up for even more course materials and plug in to a supportive community of skilled professional dog walkers and Canine Cred fans. Even a pledge of $1 on Patreon does a lot to help Canine Cred in its mission to empower dog walkers with skills and knowledge so they can be fulfilled in their work.